Welcome to Small Spark Theory. This podcast is designed as a collection of thoughts, ideas, and practical tips on using marginal gains to help your agency new business endeavours. Small Spark Theory is hosted and created by Lucy Mann, founder of Gunpowder Consulting. Based on over 25 years of new business practice, Gunpowder's mission is to help agencies take control of the new business process, create effective marketing plans, and provide tools to measure success. For more information, please visit gunpowderconsulting.com.
So today I'm here with Isabel Jarvis, my fellow consultant here at Gunpowder.
Hello.
We are, for this first episode, going to be just setting the scene a little bit about new business, what we mean by new business and its context in agency life, and also going into a bit of detail about why we believe marginal gains, the concept of marginal gains, can be really useful for agencies to help with their new business process. There's probably never been a more contentious, worrisome, or debated element of agency life than new business. To some of you, it's probably a necessary evil. You've got a vague feeling that you could be doing more, but you're probably ticking along okay. Or maybe you've got completely everything in hand, but you just need to keep updating your skills. Or you could be at the other end of the spectrum where you just find the whole thing completely terrifying and it can have a bit of a paralysing effect and thinking, oh, I know it's something I need to get sorted, but actually there's 101 other things that I need to do first. And client business always comes first. And certainly a lot of the problem, the reason why new business does become such a headache for people really is down to the agency model. Our agencies are built on a model of billable time. Most people in the agency, certainly in smaller agencies, everybody is focused on billable time. So there isn't the fat, there isn't the layer of resource that can focus on going out prospecting for new clients. Particularly if we can't see immediate return, it's quite difficult to be able to commit resource to something where we may not see a return on it in the first year or even the second year. So that's the reason that I think a lot of these things don't happen. And for the number of agencies that I'd worked with over the years, it's a familiar story. One, it's difficult for people to know where to start. They're busy working on clients, and you end up with a feast and famine roller coaster, which I'm sure lots of you are familiar with, where you get really, really busy working on clients, so you don't have any time to think about new business. And then suddenly that work drops off and you get a little bit of a dip in revenue and you think, right, we should be doing something on new business, and you throw lots of time and energy at it, but you don't see the immediate results. It can become demoralizing. And as I say, you get this roller coaster. Hopefully, with some of the things that we're going to be discussing in this series, we can try and smooth out that ride a bit. These are tools and techniques that you can use so that you've got a system that's ticking away in the background, that's working all the time, however busy you are. And by having that constant tick in the background, the constant best practice that's happening, hopefully you won't get that same roller coaster ride. It's also worth saying that new business should never, ever be the sole responsibility of one person. If you're the agency owner, this shouldn't just be on your shoulders. If you're the new business manager, it shouldn't just be on your shoulders. This is something that every single person in the agency should understand, should know what your objectives are, what you're trying to do, and everybody can play a part in the process. So as I say, that's something we'll be going into a bit more detail over the course of these episodes. But yeah, you're not alone. Try as much as you can to get everybody in the business involved. It's also worth remembering that not everybody is a slick salesperson. And I've spent a lot of my career working specifically in the design sector on the DBA, Design Business Association Expert Register. And I work with a lot of creative businesses and a lot of owner-managers who are designers, creatives, who have built the business up. They're not business people and they tend to be more introverted than extrovert. You can talk about your craft at length, but the idea of selling just feels really unnatural. So give yourself a break and make it easier on yourself. The fears and the discomfort that you experience is something that lots of your peers will be experiencing as well. And as I say, hopefully some of the ideas that we're going to be discussing over the series will be helpful and make some of those scenarios a little easier to deal with. There's also been a huge change in a new business, certainly in the last 10 years, and a massive change in the last 5 years. If I think back, when I first started an agency new business, that was in the early 90s. I was working as a new business lead generator in a telemarketing agency, and I used to send out VHS show reels in jiffy bags out to marketing directors. What's a VHS? I know.
I'm joking.
Yes, that's how old I am. That's how young you are.
Stop it.
But we used to send out show reels or brochures for design agencies, show reels for ad agencies, send them to marketing directors, follow them up on the phone. And then there would be a little bit of schmoozing that would happen after that, a credentials meeting, a bit of schmoozing, and then a bit of entertaining, and some business would fall out at the end. Now, I can remember watching Mad Men when the first episode started of the first series and being astounded that the way that they were going after new business was exactly the same way. Nothing had changed in 30, 40 years, from the 50s all the way through to the 90s. But now, since the advent of the internet, everything has changed in the same way that the way that we shop is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go into a shop anymore just to talk to a sales assistant before we buy a TV. We talk to our friends, we go online, we do some research, we read reviews.
We go on TripAdvisor. Before we book any holiday.
We do, exactly. We do lots of research ourselves, and we do all of that before we actually engage with a salesperson or with the company that we're actually going to buy from. That's happening in the consumer world, but obviously, as we know, that's affected how business-to-business sales operates as well. And people are buying business services in a completely different way too. It just means that the traditional approach that we've known for many years of a new business sales director or somebody that's got a little black book of contacts, yes, there is some relevance still for that, but there are many more considerations. There are online and offline channels. Now, any of you that have been to one of my talks, maybe for the Design Business Association, will have seen a diagram that I use, which I call the New Business Equation, which demonstrates all of the different considerations, all of the parts of the marketing and sales process that we need to think about. If you haven't seen that, then drop us a line and I can send you a copy. We're in the process of updating it at the moment because nothing stays the same. It's getting,
always moving.
It's getting bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of considerations. And if we imagine this map of all of the different channels that we need to think about, whether it's social media or PR or hosted events or speaking at conferences, managing our SEO, thinking about newsletters, there's a whole number of different things that we need to consider. We've got a huge number of considerations, and I like to think of that equation. It's like getting under the bonnet, and it's an engine, and there are a number of cogs that all need to turn. So instead of thinking, actually, we need a really big new business idea, we need an amazing marketing plan, because so often I've seen somebody spending a long time, and you've probably experienced this too.
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of time planning a really ambitious marketing plan, and what happens?
You don't know where to start.
You don't know where to start. People get bored. They get fed up with the process. If it's too big and too cumbersome, it doesn't happen.
Needs to be manageable.
Completely manageable. Rather than thinking of a really ambitious marketing plan, rather than thinking, oh, we need to spend a lot of money on hiring a really slick salesperson, actually, let's think of the individual parts of the process and just work out what we can do a little bit better. If we can just be a bit better, for example, at linking in and following up with people when we meet them, or if our credentials presentations, if we're going to do credentials presentations, discuss, if they were just a little bit better, then can we make that a little bit more impact? And if we can add in small improvements at the different parts of the marketing process, then we're going to get a better result out at the end. This is the marginal gains approach that I think can really, really help with new business. Now, anybody here who hasn't come across marginal gains, Google now David Brailsford or the Sky cycling team, and you will read an incredible story about how the Sky team had been performing really poorly. Let's not say badly, but they hadn't won anything for a very long time.
Not to their highest potential.
They weren't maximising their potential.
No, they weren't.
David Brailsford started working with Sky and used his marginal gains philosophy by breaking down the processes of riding a bike. Makes it sound really easy. But he didn't come up with a brand new bike or bring in new riders. What he did is he looked at all of the parts of the process. He gave them antibacterial hand gel to use when they were going to competitions, because if they're shaking hands with fellow competitors, if they're not carrying germs, they're not transmitting germs, they're not going to get ill, so they won't miss out on training time. If they have a better night's sleep, then they're going to maximise their training time. So he gave them better mattresses. He spent loads of time with nutritionists working out the optimal kind of food and hydration to get the best performance. And he looked at all the really, really small changes, slight changes to the kit, to their skin suits they wear on the track, all of those kind of things. He put them in a wind tunnel, made sure they were as aerodynamic as they could be. And the rest is history. Our cyclists have won huge medals.
Record amounts of medals.
Yes, lots of medals, obviously, last year in Rio. So it's been a huge success story. And when I was watching the Olympics in Rio this year, I noticed that more and more of our medal winners were crediting their teams when they were making their acceptance or having their interviews after their medal ceremonies. So they were crediting nutritionists and the wider team. They're all saying thanks goes to the wider team, because there were lots of the parts of their training process that are being considered rather than just the pure physical aspect. That's enough about the Olympics. There's no lycra here.
There might be.
There's no need.
This is a podcast.
There's no need to. Yeah, no one can see. Thank goodness. There's no need for any of that. We don't even have to break into a sweat. We're just going to think a little bit more about how we can make some small changes, some small improvements in the different parts of our marketing mix to get a better result. We've been talking quite broadly about a number of areas where you can make improvements, and we discussed earlier about a marketing plan that can be too expansive or too ambitious or just too unwieldy, and quite often those plans involve a lot of people, they take too long to finish, and by the time it gets signed off, everybody's a bit bored and no one quite knows where to start, and they've kind of forgotten what they were trying to achieve in the first place. So it's worth taking a little step back, because I think before you go into planning mode, it's really important to understand what it is that we're trying to achieve. It's one thing saying, okay, we need new business. We know we need new business. But the starting point needs to be, where are we now, and where do we want to take the business? So I'd challenge all of you listening to this, if this is a good time. It's January after all, start of a new year. I know lots of you are thinking about what you can do a little bit different, how you can deliver that new business target for this year. It's a good time to start thinking about your objectives. If you're the agency owner, you've probably got an idea already about, and depending on your financial year, what your financial objectives are. hopefully you've got that, whether it's for the next year, whether it's for the next 3 years or 5 years, you've probably got some idea of a business plan and a growth plan. So that's your starting point, is to look at the revenue, and you'll have an idea already of the clients you already have, the revenue that they make up, but also the type of revenue. So I often talk to agencies about pillar clients. You may have in your agency 1 or 2 larger clients, or maybe more than that, that are if you like, they're the pillars of your revenue. You've probably got a balance of those pillar clients and some of the smaller ones. It's good for you to understand of your new business target or your growth target. Try and model your existing clients and understand what you need more of and what you need less of. And that process may end up with you saying, do you know what, actually we need one more pillar client. If we can get one of those, then we can probably lose some of these other smaller ones, which we know don't have the growth potential. And actually, when you start going through that process, you may find that there are some in there that are just difficult. We've all got them.
Maybe not worth the effort.
Yeah,
most
agencies have probably got a couple of clients that they could do with losing. And a good way to think about your existing client base and your future client base is to think about it on a fun, fame and fortune perspective. So is your client delivering you fortune? So are they providing you with fantastic revenue? If they are, if they can provide you with sustainable revenue, then it isn't so important that they make you famous, i.e. they don't have to be a really high profile brand, and they don't necessarily have to be tremendous fun. Alternatively, you might have a fun client that's great for everyone in the agency to work on because it's really enjoyable, but it isn't necessarily paying an awful lot of revenue, or it's not adding a lot of revenue to the bottom line. And they won't necessarily make you really famous, but it's a good morale boost for the team because maybe you're allowed to be more creative, you're allowed to be more strategic. It's the kind of thing that less rules, yeah, and allows you to do your really good work. Yeah. Then you've got the other ones who are going to make you famous. So either you can win awards from the work. Again, it might not pay a lot. It might not necessarily be that greater fun, although usually fun and fame tend to sit quite well together. So maybe your client's answering 2 out of those 3 things, but at least they have to be ticking one of those boxes. So think about that with the clients that you've already got, and then think about it when you're thinking about who it is you want to work for. Certainly think about it with your lead qualification criteria. More of that in a future episode. But for now, going back to your setting your objectives. So first, you're going to think about some financial objectives. You're going to think which kind of clients that you need to be attracting. Is it one pillar client? If it is, you know what sort of revenue you want to achieve with that client, and then it might be a few smaller ones. So that you can start to quantify that new business gap that you're trying to make up. Start to break that down into what that might mean. Is that adding another 3 clients on? Is that adding another 10 clients on? So apart from the clients and the revenue, we can also start thinking about some of the softer objectives. This might be around awards, for example. Mm-hmm. So do you want to be seen as a highly effective agency? Is a DBA, Design Effectiveness Award, is that an objective? Is D&AD an objective?
Do you want to be known for your digital work? Maybe enter into some digital awards.
Exactly. Yeah. And do you want to be seen as an authority in your particular area? Do you want to have more profile as a speaker and get invited to conferences to speak on a particular subject? So if that's an objective, and more thought leadership is becoming a useful marketing tool. So if that's right for your business, then let's add that into the objectives as well, because it's good to think of these things all at the same time, because that will dictate your plan.
And again, we will be discussing that in a future podcast as well.
We will indeed. There's so many to come.
So many.
We're going to be doing this for years. So many subjects to cover. So profile in your objectives, revenue in your objectives, the type of clients in your objectives. There may also be some business development rather than new business objectives in there. So it could be about increasing the revenue from particular existing clients. I'm sure most of you have got a client or 2 that you do some really nice work for, but you know that there's more there that you could be doing for them, but you're not quite sure how to tap into that. A good start is to write that down as part of your objectives, that growing that particular client.
There'll be more than you think as well.
There will be
different
more than
departments,
you think. Yeah,
different areas of the business.
Yeah, exactly. Different communication challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, add that into your objectives as well. It could be that there's a particular area of the business that you have historically been known for, but you're diversifying into different areas. So it could be that you want to be known more for your digital work, or you want to be known more strategically. So bring in some of those things to your objectives too. So it might be not just to win a new client in a particular area to deliver a certain revenue, but you want to bring in a more strategic project. You want to start winning strategic projects, or you want to start winning more digital projects or more social projects. So it could be a slight shift in the discipline or the focus of your projects that you're looking for. And again, all of those need to go into the objectives because that will help inform your marketing plan. Here's the challenge. I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but this isn't just you listening to me waffling on. You need to do a little bit of work as well. If you haven't already got a clear set of objectives for your marketing and new business, here's your opportunity. My challenge to you is to go away and write down your objectives. Talk to whoever you need to in the agency, discuss it with your colleagues, and have a really clear, please don't write War and Peace because it's not going to help you. But if you've got a really short bulleted list of SMART objectives, then that will help everything else that we talk about in the months ahead.
It's a focus.
It's a focus, yes. And everything that we talk about, you can pin back to your objectives. And from there, it will start to help you populate your plan. None of this is rocket science. These are things that you know already. All we're trying to do is find you ways to make it more easy to be productive and to get these things done. Because this isn't a sexy, glamorous, clever, smart idea. This is just about doing small things a little bit better and making it more manageable so that you don't just have a moment of new business brilliance and then you get busy and you forget about it. This is about building it into your everyday processes.
Consistent.
It's kind of process hacking a little bit, just finding you some ways, some shortcuts that are just going to make things a little bit easier to help you build momentum. It's competition time. We have got I'm going to give you the gift of time. One lucky listener is going to win the gift of time. I know that when I speak to clients, everybody is too busy for new business, particularly where there isn't a dedicated new business and marketing team, I hasten to add. Otherwise, that's going to be
sometimes even when there is.
I was going to say, otherwise that's massively offending all those hardworking new business managers in agencies who just tuned out. So for a lot of you, finding the time to do all of these things is really difficult because clients are really demanding. But I reckon that everybody can find 15 minutes. Even if it's not 15 minutes every day, then just try 15 minutes a week to make that easier.
Just 15 minutes.
15 minutes. What can you do with 15 minutes? Is that going on LinkedIn and just thinking of a bunch of people that you forgot to link in with? Maybe somebody that you worked with a couple of years ago. Or going on LinkedIn, congratulating somebody else on a new job.
Sharing something that might be relevant to that person.
Making a recommendation for someone. All those kind of things. Or it might be going back and emailing somebody that you haven't spoken to for ages.
Absolutely.
Getting in touch, seeing if they fancy a coffee. So there are lots of small things you can do. You know what you can do. What would you do with 15 minutes? If you tweet what you're going to do with your new business and marketing 15 minutes using the hashtag
#SmallSparkTheory.
Yeah. We will literally give you the gift of time. We have a beautiful School of Life glass egg timer. I think the School of Life intended it for some meditative 15 minutes or a bit of mindfulness. Forget that. We're going to use it purely for revenue generation.
You can also use it for that as well.
If you want to, but not during working hours.
No.
So, yes, it's a beautiful glass 15-minute egg timer from the wonderful School of Life shop.
It feels like they should sponsor us or something.
I think they should.
Yeah.
Call them,
Yeah,
Lizzie.
yeah.
Call them. It's sitting here and it's waiting for the best tweet, the best use of 15 minutes for new business and marketing purposes.
To be stressed that
Yes.
for new business and marketing purposes.
Exactly. We will pick the winner from Twitter and you'll have this lovely thing coming to you in the post. No expense spared. Thinking about marginal gains, I've got a little book recommendation for today. I had the pleasure of seeing Matthew Syed presenting at the London Business School TEDx back in April. Matthew Syed last year, so April 2016, talked about his new book, Black Box Thinking.
How does success really happen? Where does high performance come from? This is a question I've been interested in most of my adult life. I've been lucky enough to go and explore, analyse, investigate some of the highest performing institutions on the planet to figure out what's going on. These organisations are different from a superficial perspective, but I'd like to suggest that when you look deep down, there are real structural similarities. This is as true of Google as it is of Team Sky or Mercedes F1 or indeed Goldman Sachs. What they share is a capacity to learn from mistakes. They're interested in creating a just culture. They want to make sure that all the people in the organisation are infused with the growth mindset, a learning mindset. And crucially, they're always looking to innovate, to keep pace and hopefully stay ahead of a rapidly changing world.
One of the things that Matthew talks about in his book, he's examining the logic of failure. And it was really interesting where he drew comparisons from the healthcare industry and from aviation. And he goes into different case studies in each, but he talks about this comparison about the different culture around failure. And I'll quote from the book. He says, "We've already seen that in healthcare, the culture is one of evasion. Accidents are described as one-offs or one of those things. Doctors say, we did the best we could. This is the most common response to failure in the world today. But in aviation, things are radically different. Learning from failure is hardwired into the system. All aeroplanes must carry 2 black boxes, one of which records instructions sent to all onboard electronic systems. The other is a cockpit voice recorder, enabling investigators to get into the minds of the pilots in the moments leading up to an accident. Instead of concealing failure or skirting around it, aviation has a system where failure is data rich." And I really loved that idea about failure being data rich. And obviously, we're not talking about life and death here. You know, both of those instances in airlines and in healthcare system are life and death situations. Things that we're dealing with are much, much more trivial. You know, if we are honest with ourselves about why we lost a pitch, then we can learn from that. So I think the whole idea about failure being data rich is a really interesting one. Well, thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Do get in touch and tell us what you think. The next podcast coming out in February, we're going to be joined by Tim Duncan from TDC PR, and we'll be talking all about how you can make the most of raising your profile using PR. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
You have been listening to Small Spark Theory, a podcast by Gunpowder Consulting. Music is provided by Duke Deck, available via dukedeck.com. Small Spark Theory is hosted by Lucy Mann. The editor is Isabel Jarvis, and the podcast is produced by Rosanna Miles at makemypodcast.space. Visit gunpowderconsulting.com for more information and visit our blog there to download further podcasts. Join the conversation on Twitter at #GunpowderTweets #SmallSparkTheory And if you like what you hear, head to iTunes and give us a star, or 5. Thanks for listening.